So next, to build on that, what I have is a debunking the $15 minimum wage. I have an article from Bongino.com. Once again, it's written by John Hawkins. And this one's very important. This one explains the whole idea behind the $15 minimum wage. Before, years ago, what it used to be is we've seen a party switch from these big businesses, these big organizations. It used to be, okay, we're in favor of low taxes, so we go, and less regulation, so we go and we vote for the Republican Party. Now they realized that they can easily beat down their opponents by voting for the Democrat Party. Democrat Party will go forward with $15 minimum wage hikes, which will decimate small business, who are already, if you're not shut down, 30%. We have 1/3 of small businesses have been shut down this year because of everything, because the forced closures from a lot of governments, a lot of their policies and regulations have really hampered their ability to grow as a business and survive. So you see 30%, 1/3 of our entire small businesses shut down. On top of that, now $15 minimum wage coming down the pike. You cannot afford to do that as a small business owner, which Amazon knows. So there's some reports coming out now. Amazon in 2018 was actually lobbying for a raise of the minimum wage to $15 an hour. Why is that? Is it because Amazon knows they can afford to pay that much, but they know their competitors cannot? They know some of these small businesses that are producing goods that Amazon legitimately copies them and makes the exact same thing and just sells it under their Amazon name, and they sell it cheaper. They can beat them that way, and now they can beat them to the minimum wage. So if these people have to hire people to manufacture at a price of $15 an hour, when they're not making enough on the product to make up for that price, they're going to have to raise the price of their product. So if they before were beating out Amazon, Amazon's going to be able to beat them out now with the price. And that's essentially the reason that these big corporations like the idea of a $15 minimum wage hike, because a lot of them, such as a Target, already pays $15. So around here, at least in New Jersey. So for them to get that $15 minimum wage hike, it does not make a difference for them. They just gain more power. They take up all of the business that was, or all the customers that were going to the small business now that has to shut down. It gets taken up by these big corporations, which is why they lobby for a minimum wage hike to begin with. It has nothing to do with you, the worker. It absolutely has nothing to do with you. And if we're going to go for a $15 minimum wage, why don't we just go to a $30 minimum wage or a $100 minimum wage? Why is it that we are drawing some sort of line in the sand of where we can go? If that's what it's all about, if it's all about paying people better, why don't we make the minimum wage $30 an hour so everyone lives really well? And anybody that's an economist, any reasonable, realistic economist, anyone that is renowned with some sort of clout behind their name, they are never in favor of a minimum wage set to begin with. Even having a minimum wage, they're not in favor of, or a minimum wage hike, because they know it decimates small business as well as it decimates jobs. People are just going to straight up get laid off, or they'll get less hours because of it, and they'll bring in less money. So he goes through a couple reasons. We got 5 different reasons, and he debunks the minimum wage here, John Hawkins. First, he starts off with inflation. He states, raising the minimum wage of $15 an hour is a recipe for inflation, particularly in areas where the wages are already low. If the guy making $7.25 gets $15, then the guy that was making $15 is going to demand $22.50. Who's going to pay for all this? That would be you, after the business owners quite understandably raise prices to cover costs. If it didn't work that way, we could raise the minimum wage to $1,000 and all of us could buy big houses and sports cars. Unfortunately, there is no free lunch. So he's right. And this actually I personally experienced when I worked at a pizza joint when I was a kid. I was like 17 years old. I was making the minimum wage at the time in New Jersey, which was $7.25 an hour. As soon as they decided to raise it to $8.25, I was already at $8.25 because over time I started to get some increases as I was there for a year. Then I said, okay, they're getting $8.25. I now want $9.25. And that's what ended up happening. They had to pay me $9.25 or else I was going to, go and work somewhere else. So this does actually, and it was a small business that I worked for. So jobs will also be lost. And so this is what John Hawkins writes. When I was young, I used to be a Burger King assistant manager. We had a guy there whose only 2 skills were basically mopping and making burgers at about 75% of the speed of other employees. Do you know what happens to a guy like that in a $15 an hour world? At best, he gets fewer hours. At worst, he gets fired or not hired in the first place. Because if you're not bringing in $15 worth of an hour worth of value to the table, you're a money loser and a business is not a charity. Why distort the market in a way that is guaranteed to harm the lowest skilled workers? Which is right. This is going to harm the lowest skilled workers. They will get laid off. And more importantly, from what he points out to and what he alludes to, is you have a $15 minimum wage hike, and if you do not bring that value to the table, you will get laid off. And the best way to explain this is, and this is why I really don't even believe in having a minimum wage to begin with, because you should let the market decide what your value is as you work. The market is always the main determinant, and it should be the one that's the most relied upon for what value your work is. If what you're doing is bringing the company in an hour $100 an hour, and then they decide they're okay, well, we're going to pay this guy $70 an hour because he's bringing us in $100 an hour. We'll give him health benefits, everything else. Let's say that's how it goes. That is how a free market works. This system will price people out. It will price them out of the labor. They will automize jobs because of this. And then next, what he has is, it means younger workers will be less skilled. A lot of people currently working minimum wage Mick jobs, as in McDonald jobs, are high school kids who quite understandably don't get paid a lot because they have no job experience and don't bring much to the table. So what happens if those starter jobs go away? These kids that don't get that early work experience, which makes them even less valuable to future employers and less ready to enter the workplace. What's the long-term economic benefit of creating a vicious cycle where it's harder than ever to get a job without experience, but it's simultaneously harder to get that experience? Which is right. You won't be able to get experience because you won't have any skills, and you have to build those skills up. But no one wants to pay anyone $15 an hour to build their skills up. They want to pay somebody minimum wage to get their skills built up. Then you get into a managerial position and you get paid more. It does really, all of that makes sense to me. I just don't think it's the government's job to depict to companies what they should be paying them. And then what people will say is, oh, okay, well, if you don't have the government tell them what they could pay them, then they're going to take advantage of the workers and pay them $2 an hour. That can't work in a free market system. That can't work where it's a competitive system in a free market. If the McDonald's is only paying you $2 an hour, then you can go to the Popeyes across the street that's willing to pay you $10 an hour. There's always the grass is, they always say the grass isn't so green on the other side. There is actually some grass that's greener on the other side. If they're abusing you as an employee at one place, you can go to another place and get another job. I actually think that there should be more movement in occupations, me personally. I think that should be a real thing. I think a lot of times we're actually held down to the idea of having health care through our employer because it's not as free market of a system as everyone thinks it is. Everyone makes like we need the subsidized government system, and it already is heavily subsidized, and it's not free market based. If it was free market based where you just paid some sort of an insurance plan where it was so much a month yourself, and it was a direct primary care, which is, it's a long story to go into, but if you paid for some sort of system that way and you paid a monthly payment, almost like going to the gym, let's say it was $100 a month, you would see a lot more people moving from one job to another. There'd be much more mobilization in terms of that or transitioning. But that doesn't happen because people feel tied down to their current job because they say, oh, I got healthcare here, I got this, I got that. But you can always, my point is in a free market, you could always switch one job to the other. If they're not paying you good here, go somewhere else and work there. And having big businesses, having these big corporations does not help that because then they can all collude with each other. That's why having small business is good, because a small business will pay you, oh, okay, well, I'm going to pay you this. Oh, they're paying you $2. I'm going to pay you $10 over here. And that's much more likely to happen when you have more small business involvement in the economy. So next is, it will spur on efforts to replace low-income workers with automation. I explained this. What you're going to have, when I worked at the pizza place myself, they had this machine, and it was an acronym. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I knew it spelt out Mike, and everyone thought it was hilarious because that is my name. My name's Mike. And it made all the pizzas. It dressed them, it put the sauce on them, it put the cheese on them, and then it put the toppings on itself. And let's say that machine costs $30,000 for that machine, and you have to pay me $15 an hour every single week. My paycheck, by the time everything's said and done, by the end of the year, I'm worth about as much as that machine is a year. I'm $30,000. They can just buy that machine, and they automize my job, and they save themselves money after the first year. They make their money back. That's the point, and that's why they automize jobs, to save more money because the government is making them pay more. If that wasn't the case, then they'd much rather just have me, who's at least like a discernible, comprehensive human being, where it wouldn't be so easy, where you can tell me, oh, fix that pizza and do this, instead of telling a machine to do it. The machine's not going to be as comprehensive in fixing it. So very last one here. It will drive some small businesses under. Businesses across the country have taken a terrible beating over the last year. They've been forced to shut down. Some of their customers may have avoided them out of the fear of getting COVID. In other cases, they simply haven't been able to fully open because the government has refused to allow it. Now, after all that, Biden is going to take these struggling businesses and hit them with potentially huge new costs. So it will cause them to go under, essentially, and this is a policy that is in favor of big business and big corporation power over the little guy and small business shutdown, this policy. And it's obvious. Anybody that knows economics knows that this one sounds good on paper. These politicians pushing this know this as well. They legitimately know that this will cause 3.7 million jobs, at most 1.3 million jobs. They already had a cost analysis I think it was through the State Department or through the cost and budgeting office in the federal government. They've already predicted, this is going to lift 1.3 million people out of poverty. That's what they said. But it will also lay off 1.3 million. So we're going to have a couple people make a couple more bucks, and then every other people, their income goes to zero. They get zilch, nothing. So this is a big corporation policy, big corporation push, and the politicians know it. They just think that everyone here is so stupid that they actually don't know it.